widowed sister-in-law, they got into a car crash. On the brink of death, he held my hand tightly, his face full of regret. "Emily," he whispered, "bury me with Rachel. In the next life, I want to be her husband." Crying, I asked, "Mark, do you really love her that much?" He nodded and replied in a faint voice, "Yes. My love for her is everlasting, unshakable like a rock. If there's another life, I want to spend it with her, just the two of us, together forever." He loved Rachel, his widowed sister-in-law. Then what did my decades of sacrifice and devotion mean? The feeling of betrayal made me tremble all over. I wiped away my tears, let out a cold laugh, and said, "All right, Mark, die in peace. If there's a next life, I'll make sure you two get your wish." The next moment I opened my eyes, it was the day Mark brought Rachel back home. Seeing me standing there in shock, Mark raised his voice impatiently. "Emily, are you deaf? My brother's gone, and it's not easy for Rachel to raise a kid on her own. I brought them here to live with us. Go clean up the master bedroom so Rachel and little Joey can move in. And Rachel's health isn't great. Joey's still growing. You need to make sure they each get an egg every day." Deep down, I rejected Mark's request because I knew that Rachel used to be Mark's girlfriend. But after an accident left his older brother seriously injured, the family forced Rachel to marry his brother to ease his pain. Knowing this history, I feared Mark and Rachel would reignite their past relationship. So I firmly refused. I told Mark, "It's true, raising a kid alone isn't easy. We can help with farming in spring and harvest in fall. We can even give them food stamps and supplies to ease their burden. But letting them move in isn't proper. Rachel will eventually remarry, and people in the countryside love to gossip. If rumors spread, it'll be hard to hear and harder to explain." Rachel burst into loud sobs, took Joey's hand, and turned to leave. "If the Miller family can't take us in, then we might as well die," she shouted. Just then, a startled ox from the commune's production team charged straight at them. The child died instantly, and Rachel was seriously injured. Leaders from the production team and the commune came to negotiate compensation. Since I worked at the local supply co-op and knew a lot of people, I swallowed my pride and begged the commune officials to offer her more. In the end, Rachel received a large compensation payment. After burying her child, she left with the money and never came back. After that incident, Mark and I entered a long period of silent tension. We never spoke of it, but we both knew deep down, Joey's death and Rachel's departure had become a permanent thorn in our hearts. After the economic reforms, the supply co-op closed down. I took over and turned it into a supermarket. Business grew rapidly, and I earned more and more money. Mark and I made up, and out of guilt, believing that Joey's death and Rachel's disappearance were somehow tied to what I said that day, I gave him whatever he asked for. When motorcycles first came out, I bought him one. When cell phones were new, I got him an early model. When private cars became popular, I was the first to get him one. Mark became the most fashionable man in the village and surrounding towns. I thought the two of us would grow old together, support each other until the end, and be buried side by side. That would have been a fulfilled life. But I never imagined that at 60, Mark would run away with Rachel. That day, I had planned a birthday party for him. I'd reserved a hotel, but he never showed up. I called him, he didn't answer. Later, he sent me a text that said, "Emily, you're a dull and materialistic woman. These years of marriage with you have been exhausting. I want to be with Rachel. We're traveling abroad now. When we come back, we'll get divorced." I was so furious, my hands shook and my whole body trembled. If he wanted to be with Rachel, he could have just told me. I'm not the kind of woman who clings to a man shamelessly. It's the 21st century after all. Society is open-minded now. Divorce isn't something shameful. But instead of telling me, he went and did something disgraceful, like running away with another woman. A 60-year-old man acting worse than a 3-year-old child. Whatever books he's read might as well have been fed to the dogs. While he was off enjoying himself abroad, he left me alone to endure the stares and whispered curiosity of the guests. When they saw how pale I looked, someone asked if I was feeling unwell. I forced a smile and said I was just a little tired and needed to rest. To save face for Mark, I even explained to everyone that he had something to take care of and would be arriving later. While trying to compose myself, I cursed Mark and all 18 generations of his ancestors over and over in my head. That's when my phone rang. It was a call from traffic police. Mark had gotten into a car accident. "Emily, are you stupid or just deaf?" Mark shouted, pushing me hard. "I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me?" Rachel glanced at me, then looked at Mark, wiping tears from her eyes. "Mark, Emily doesn't want me here. I should go. You and your wife are having issues because of me, and I feel terrible about it." As she spoke, tears poured down her face. "Poor Joey. He's already lost his father at such a young age, and now he doesn't even have a home." Mark's nephew Joey looked up and glared at me, his little face twisted in anger. Like a stubborn calf, he turned to me and shouted, "This is my home with Uncle Mark. We're both Millers. You're not. We don't want you here. Go away." I stared at Rachel in shock. There was no way a kid his age could come up with something like that on his own. If someone hadn't taught him to say those words, I'd never believe it. While I stood frozen in thought, Joey suddenly rammed into me again. Completely unprepared, I fell backward and landed hard on the ground. The pain snapped me out of it. I had been reborn. I had returned to the year 1980. Everything from my past life flashed before my eyes like a movie. I jolted up from the ground, grabbed the army green satchel from Mark's hands, snatched the red wedding-themed wash basin from Rachel, and then took Joey by the hand. Smiling so wide my teeth showed, I beamed at all three of them. "Come on in. No need to be shy. We're family, aren't we? This is your home after all." I was so overly warm and cheerful that Mark was stunned. Rachel looked even more anxious, shrinking behind Mark like a child hiding from trouble. Only little Joey was thrilled. He kicked off his worn shoes with toes peeking out, jumped onto the Kang bed and rolled around laughing. Mark stood still for a few seconds before snapping out of it. He reached out as if to feel my forehead. "Emily, are you sick or something?" Before he could touch me, Rachel cried out, "Ah, I twisted my ankle. Mark, come help me." Mark immediately turned away from me and rushed over to support her. I sneered in my heart. Rachel's little damsel in distress act always worked on Mark. He fell for it every time. When he noticed the smirk on my face, Mark paused for a moment while holding Rachel's arm, then spoke in a softer tone. "Emily, I want Rachel and Joey to stay in the master bedroom. After my brother passed, Rachel's health hasn't been good. Joey is still growing. Every morning when you make breakfast, make sure they each get an egg." I cut him off. "We only have one old hen at home. It lays an egg every 2 days. What do you expect me to do? Go digging around the chicken's butt every day?" Rachel, who came from a once prosperous landlord family, covered her mouth and giggled softly. Mark, like her, always found fault with the way I talked. Too rough, too unrefined. But I was just a village woman, a grade school graduate. I never learned how to speak an elegant, flowery language. Mark was an elementary school teacher. Rachel, despite coming from a landlord background, had finished middle school. Her family fell from grace when the landlords were stripped of their status. The Rachels had become so poor that even the rats cried when they visited. But ironically, that poverty worked to her advantage. Back then, families preferred their children to marry someone from a poor peasant background, while people like Rachel, descended from landlords and capitalists, were shunned. Rachel had her eye on Mark and actively pursued him, not because she loved him, but because she valued his poor peasant status and his respectable teaching job. Mark was always the kind of man who judged people by their appearance. He fell for Rachel because of her delicate, fragile look, like a willow swaying in the wind. Both of them considered themselves cultured intellectuals, always deep in conversation about their ideals, ambitions, poetry, and literature. With his feelings and her intentions aligned, they hit it off immediately. Watching the two of them together, I couldn't help but sigh. Fate had granted me this second life. This time around, I would make sure they stayed together for real. A lifetime is a long time. I wanted to see just what kind of life they could make together. Without my financial support, would Mark ever have lived in a high-rise or driven a luxury car? Without my connections, could he have gone from a barely paid substitute teacher to becoming a school principal? I was truly curious to see how they'd end up. As I kept zoning out, Rachel began to overthink and started performing her usual innocent act. "Emily, are you regretting this? If you are, there's still time. Just say the word and I'll leave right now. I immediately grabbed her arm, smiling as I wrapped it around her shoulder. Rachel, don't go. If you leave, how will I get to enjoy the show? I pushed her into the master bedroom, laid out her bedding, then picked up my own and prepared to move it elsewhere. Mark called out, "Take mine too." I shouted back, "You sleep with Rachel. No need to separate anymore." Mark rushed out after me, grabbing my arm. His face turned red as he scolded me. "What nonsense are you spouting, Emily? It's one thing to be uneducated, but do you have to be so vulgar and petty too? Aren't you ashamed to talk like that?" I snapped my arm free from his dirty hand. "You knew I only finished elementary school, Mark. Are you regretting it now? Then go ahead, get a divorce. And by the way, that flowery poetry and highbrow talk of yours doesn't mean anything in the countryside. Joey wouldn't even understand it, and if you said it to a horse, it'd drop dead on the spot. People here are just trying to fill their stomachs." Mark stood there stunned, not knowing what to say. I had never been so sharp with words before. I quickly calmed down and said in a more playful tone, "If your heart is pure, you'll see good. If your heart is dirty, you'll only see filth. If you don't have impure intentions, you wouldn't assume others do either. A sister-in-law is like a mother. Have you heard that one? What's wrong with you staying in the same room to help take care of Joey? I even hung up a curtain down the middle of the bed. Didn't you see it? Or would you prefer I build a wall down the middle instead? For a grown man, you're acting more dramatic than a woman." I rattled off my words like stringing beans, grabbed my bedding, and left. But instead of heading for the side room, I walked straight out the front door. Mark chased after me again. "Emily, where are you going?" Without looking back, I said, "To my brother's house. Rachel said she's scared to live there alone after he died. I'm not." Mark blocked my path, clearly frustrated. "Are you mad at me? I didn't mean anything by it. If I said something to upset you, I'm sorry." "You're not the problem," I said coldly. "The problem is my own eyes, full of crap. I misjudged the kind of man you are." In my previous life, I tiptoed around him, constantly trying to make up for his disappointments. I endured humiliation and heartache. But now that I had been reborn, it was time to cut my losses. There was still time to walk away. I pushed past Mark and went to my brother's house. The heated Kang bed was already warm. After washing my face and feet, I climbed under the covers. For the first time in a while, my anxious heart felt calm again. In the still of the night, I began sorting through everything that had happened since I came back. The most urgent task ahead was clear. I had to divorce Mark. But getting divorced wouldn't be easy. It was now 1980. Although China had begun its economic reforms, people in our area were still steeped in outdated customs. If I rashly brought up divorce, my parents would be the first to object. After living 2 lifetimes, I no longer feared judgmental stares or gossip. I only feared my mother's crying, screaming, and empty threats to hang herself. People of her generation believed in lifelong devotion to one person. Even if their husbands beat them or their in-laws mistreated them, they'd grit their teeth and stay, convinced they had to hang themselves on one tree for life. My marriage to Mark had been arranged by both families when we were children. My father once told me, "Once you're married, you're no longer a Lynn. You live as a Miller, you die as a Miller." That kind of feudal mindset was deeply rooted in them. Even before I was reborn, I clung to the same idea, being loyal to one man forever. After Rachel entered the picture, Mark stopped coming home for days at a time. He always claimed he had to stay overnight for work at school. I believed him. It wasn't until he eloped with Rachel and all the scattered clues fell into place that I realized they'd been secretly involved behind my back for a long time. In my previous life, even as I lay dying, I could still hear Mark cursing and blaming me. In this life, I wouldn't be his wife again, even if I had to become a nun and live in a temple. I needed to gather evidence on Mark, enough to make him willingly agree to divorce. Not only that, I had to turn public opinion in my favor and, more importantly, open my parents' eyes to Mark's true nature. The next morning, I got up early and went home to make breakfast. Mark and Rachel were still in bed. I banged on their door until they stumbled out, rubbing their eyes, clearly enjoying a cozy sleep-in. I scooped out 2 bowls of cornmeal, pulled a few green onions from the yard, and started making a pot of dough drop soup. I asked Mark to help me build the fire, and I deliberately acted sweet and close, whispering into his ear like we were still deeply in love. Rachel, who was washing her face inside the house, kept sneaking glances at us in the kitchen. When she saw us acting all cozy and whispering to each other, she got so mad she threw her towel down in a rage. During breakfast, I ladled soup into Mark's bowl and even pinched his arm, pretending to be concerned. "You've lost weight since my brother passed. You must be exhausted. I'll buy eggs tomorrow so you can have some egg water. It'll help." Mark, surprised by my rare tenderness, nodded eagerly. "Things are busy at the supply co-op. You need to take care of yourself too." Moved, I rested my head lightly on his shoulder. "Mark, you're the only one who's ever truly cared about me. You're the best." Rachel sat beside us with her head slightly lowered. Her face went from pale to flushed to green with jealousy. Her fingers tightened around her chopsticks, and finally she slammed them down on the table. "I'm full," she muttered, then climbed down from the heated bed and stormed out, shoes in hand. Putting on that show nearly made me sick. Pretending to be sweet with Mark was exhausting. Thankfully, Rachel broke down and stormed off. The moment she left, I dropped the act. After breakfast, I grabbed my handcart and went door to door collecting wild herbs and mountain goods to sell in the city. In my past life, after taking over the supply co-op, I ran it by day and acted as an agricultural broker on the side. Since men couldn't be relied on, I had to throw myself into my career. With this second chance, knowing what I knew, I was determined to get a head start on my business. After a long day of hustling, I sneaked back home late at night and crouched beneath the rear window to eavesdrop. I knew Rachel wouldn't let go of what happened that morning. She'd be sure to take action tonight, and sure enough, under the faint moonlight, I saw her lift the bed curtain and crawl into Mark's bed. Hugging that scumbag, she started sobbing softly. Mark murmured to comfort her, and one thing led to another. The two of them rolled together under the blanket. I raced back to my parents' house and woke them up. Then I ran to fetch the village party secretary. When he opened the door with a frown, he asked, "Emily, what are you doing, causing a ruckus in the middle of the night? People need sleep." "Uncle Yang," I said quickly, "there's a man in my house, and I'm worried someone might hurt my sister-in-law." Since my parents' home and the village office were only a few minutes away, it was the perfect setup. I'd already explained the situation to my father in advance, so he was the first one to leap into action. The village secretary followed right behind, both of them clambering through the window frame to catch the dog couple red-handed. I pulled the string on the lamp hanging from the edge of the bed. The bulb on the ceiling flickered on, casting a dull yellow light over the room. In that dim glow, there was Rachel, straddling Mark. Both of them were stark naked, bodies drenched in sweat, eyes glazed over in a daze. It was such a disgusting sight I couldn't bear to look directly at them. I grabbed the feather duster and began whipping the filthy pair with everything I had. As I hit them, I sobbed. How could you two be so shameless? An uncle and his sister-in-law sleeping together. This is criminal indecency. Mark scrambled to shove Rachel off him, fumbled to pull on his pants, and dropped to his knees on the ground. "Emily," he begged. "I was half asleep. I thought she was you. Please don't ruin us." That bastard. Not even blinking as he lied, and dragging me into it too? I struck him harder, slapping his face, his shoulders, pouring out all my rage. I cried louder and louder, not a single tear in sight, but my goal was clear: to make enough noise to rattle the entire neighborhood. Mark started sobbing, snot dripping down his face. "Please, I'm begging you. Have mercy. I can't afford to lose my job." Rachel clumsily threw on a tank top and dropped to her knees beside him, trembling with fear. The village party secretary grabbed Mark by the ear and shouted, "I watched you grow up, and this is what you turn into. You have no shame. How do you expect to hold your head up in this village after something like this?" I cried as if my heart were being torn from my chest. The feather duster didn't stop once. The two of them ducked and flinched, using their arms to shield their heads from the blows. The party secretary finally pulled me back. "Enough, Emily. What do you want to do?" I shouted. "They're screwing each other behind my back like it's their house. I want a divorce." The next day, I went to the party secretary and got a letter of introduction. With that, I smoothly completed the divorce. I moved back into my parents' home. When my mom saw the divorce certificate, she wiped her tears over and over, sighing heavily. I really misjudged Mark, for a man to sleep with his sister-in-law. How disgusting. He stomped all over our Lynn family's dignity. My father scolded me too. You conniving little brat. You tricked even me. Your little schemes are worse than a hornet's nest. Be careful. If Mark ever figures it all out, he'll come for you. I teased him. I'm not scared. I caught him red-handed in bed. That's the truth. No parent in the world can truly be cruel to their child. Even though it was hard for them to accept, I knew they'd come around eventually. Still, I could tell they were disappointed. In their eyes, a divorced woman had little chance at happiness. But I reassured them, don't worry, the good days are still ahead for our family. Those two won't last. They don't have what it takes. In my past life, I did everything. Housework, relationships, chores, errands. Mark criticized me for being uneducated and rough, yet he enjoyed every bit of the care I gave him. Rachel, on the other hand, came from a landlord family. Aside from poetry and romantic talk, she didn't know how to lift a hand or carry a load. I didn't believe for a second they'd make it long, and sure enough, I was right. Barely 2 weeks later, little Joey came running to our house, crying out, "Auntie, help! My dad beat my mom to death." A human life was at stake. I didn't hesitate. I ran back to Mark's place. Rachel sat on the ground, hair a tangled mess, her face covered in blood and soot. Mark's eyes were bloodshot, and when he saw me, he pointed at a pile of chicken feathers on the floor, nearly crying. That was our only laying hen. She was supposed to give us eggs, and she killed it to make stew. Mark was hopping mad, like Rachel had killed his parents instead of a chicken. I need that egg water every morning for my health. Now what am I supposed to drink? I glanced toward the steaming iron pot. The chicken was already cooked, and honestly, the smell filled me with satisfaction. This was his own doing. I was the one who had spoiled Mark with that ridiculous routine. Every morning, I would crack an egg from our one old hen, pour hot water over it, and stir in sugar just for him. All because I was worried about his health. I used to save all the good food for him, never letting myself have a bite. Now the egg-laying hen was stewed, and his precious morning treat was gone for good. I turned my gaze from the steaming chicken in the pot to Rachel. Her eyes were so swollen they looked like slits, her face tear-streaked and smeared with grime. She lay half-collapsed on the floor, having just cried her heart out. When she heard me come in, she struggled to stand, her movements shaky and embarrassed. Wanting to save face, she screamed at me, "Emily, I don't need you laughing at me. Get out!" Mad dog biting everyone in sight. Who the hell wants to meddle in her pathetic mess? If Joey hadn't come crying for help, begging me to come, I wouldn't have shown up, not even if she got down on her knees and begged. I turned to leave. But she shouted after me, "Don't think I don't know you're still hung up on Mark. I'm telling you, now that we're married, if you try to seduce him again, I'll break your legs." Excuse me? I already tossed that piece of crap to her like garbage. If she wants to treat it like treasure, that's her problem. But how dare she accuse me of still wanting it? I snapped. Trash once thrown out doesn't get picked up again. What you think is gold is just filth I didn't want. The only reason I came today was because Joey was afraid you'd get beaten to death. Otherwise, you'd be on your own. A dog biting a kind-hearted man. What a waste. To completely kill whatever hope she still had, I decided to go all in. That night when I caught you two in bed, I planned the whole thing. I did it because I wanted a divorce. Rachel's face twisted with rage, her body shaking like a twig in a storm. She pointed at me and screamed, "You're disgusting. No wonder Mark didn't want you. He's always loved me. If he didn't, your little setup wouldn't have worked." We were shouting back and forth when Mark finally stepped between us, pushing me. "Emily, I'm begging you, stop coming to my house. Whatever happens between me and Rachel is none of your business." I slapped him. Hard. I didn't hold back. That slap sent him stumbling several steps backward. "Don't touch me, Mark," I snapped. "I must have been out of my damn mind today. Remember this. No matter what happens to you two, even if you die in the street, I won't lift a finger." The pain, betrayal, and humiliation from my previous life surged through me all at once. Fueled by everything I had suppressed, I raised my hand and slapped him again. even harder. Mark let out a cry, clutching his face. Blood oozed between his fingers. Rachel jumped up, shrieking, "You hit my man! Who the hell do you think you are?" I didn't flinch. I stared her down with a cold glare. "Want to know how it feels to be slapped too?" I'd been dying to lay my hands on this filthy pair for a long time. I rolled up my sleeves and gestured. "Come on, both of you, let's go." Their expressions changed instantly, and they backed away in unison. They knew I wasn't someone to mess with. I was strong enough to carry a 100-pound sack of grain on my back and haul 50 pounds of dried jujube pits all the way to town, round trip, 30 miles each way. Mark used to mock me, saying I was built like an ox and lacked any femininity. He thought it was a joke. What he never realized was that the comfortable life he enjoyed had been bought with the toll on my body. After I passed 50, my health started deteriorating. I knew it was because I had overworked myself in my younger years. When I was hospitalized, Mark didn't even visit me once. Said he was on night duty at the school. Later, I found out he wasn't caring for me because he was sneaking around with Rachel. Thank God in this life, I cut him off in time. I dropped that useless man before I sank any deeper. The disgusting couple stood frozen, stunned by my fury. I shot them a final glare and warned, "If you see me on the road, walk the other way. If you don't, I'll beat you again. Every single time." I turned and stormed out of the Miller house. Mark must have lost his damn mind because he ran after me. "Emily, wait, I just want to talk." "Mark, get lost," I shouted over my shoulder. "If you come any closer, I swear I'll claw your damn eyes out." I jabbed my finger toward his nose. "What are you, a beast? Can't understand plain words?" Mark kept chasing me. Behind him, Rachel's voice cracked as she cried, "Mark, come back. You're my husband. Why do you keep chasing after Emily? What, you still trying to get back with her?" Rachel screamed, her voice hoarse as she rushed forward to grab Mark. Mark shook her off. "I need to ask Emily something." "That's not up to you." Rachel clung to his arm, crying, "You're my husband. You can't still be emotionally entangled with her." I didn't stop walking. Mark broke free from her grip. Rachel stumbled after him, crying and shouting. Seeing both of his parents running out, Joey joined the chase too, yelling, "Mom, wait for me!" But just as Joey dashed out the door, an enraged yellow ox, seemingly gone mad, came charging down the road. Its sharp horns lifted the boy, still wearing his little red vest, high into the air. The ox let out a deafening roar and then slammed Joey to the ground with brutal force. Blood splattered everywhere. As if startled by its own violence, the ox stomped toward Rachel next. Mark screamed at the top of his lungs, and the ox turned its attention to him, lowering its head to charge again. Mark's face went pale, and he shouted as he ran toward me, "Emily, save me! Oh God, Emily!" Like lightning, I grabbed the trunk of a nearby poplar tree and scrambled up it with a few swift movements. The ox rammed its head into the trunk, hard, and collapsed on the spot, killed instantly. I patted my chest, heart racing with fear. Thank God I was still strong. If it had been anyone else, they'd have been gored to death for sure. Rachel knelt on the ground, clutching Joey, wailing in grief. The production team rushed in with a cart to take the child to the county hospital. Mark stood frozen, torn between climbing onto the cart or not. Rachel screamed at him to get in, but he fumbled through his pants pockets and looked at me helplessly. "I don't have any money." Both of them turned to me. Rachel started crying again and sobbed, "Emily, I know you have money. Please, help us." Looking at the child, his tiny body broken and bleeding, I softened. Truthfully, I'd never had much affection for Joey. Rachel had raised him to be arrogant and cruel. I still remembered clearly the words he'd thrown at me last time, after knocking me to the ground. But now, seeing him so mangled and fragile, I couldn't turn away. After a moment's hesitation, I ran home to get money. The ox cart left first. I grabbed my savings and rushed to the production team to borrow a horse. Riding horseback was faster, and I arrived at the hospital nearly at the same time as the cart. Inside, Mark and Rachel were arguing. The doctor said things didn't look good. The odds are against him. If you want to try saving him, it'll cost a lot. But if the treatment fails, you'll lose both the money and the child. So what's it gonna be? You don't have a job. She earns next to nothing. How will you repay the debt? Rachel cried harder, clearly wrestling with the decision. Then she said, like she was throwing everything on the line, He's your son. You tell me, are we saving him or not? Mark froze. I was even more stunned. Up until that moment, I had always believed Joey was my late brother's child. I had no idea he was actually the result of Rachel's affair with Mark. That revelation hit me like a slap. The sense of betrayal made me tremble inside. But then I told myself, at least I didn't spend my whole life being fooled. I handed the money to Mark and turned to leave. A few days later, Mark and Rachel returned. Joey had died. Nothing gained, everything lost. After Joey's death, their relationship grew colder by the day. I often heard them fighting. Mark would yell at Rachel, saying she was clumsy, couldn't cook, couldn't make money. Rachel, in turn, screamed that Mark was useless and couldn't provide. Poverty strips all joy from a marriage. In our past life, Mark had everything he wanted because I was the one supporting him, taking care of every detail. Now, he was finally getting a taste of what life was like without money. One day, I heard they'd fought again. Rachel had her period and a bad stomachache. She wanted brown sugar water, but Mark didn't have money to buy any. That led to another argument. Their argument escalated into a full-on brawl. Rachel grabbed a hammer and struck Mark on the head. He collapsed on the ground, unconscious. When I heard about their fight, I just smiled. Felt damn good. Let the wicked deal with the wicked. In my previous life, I had treated Mark far too well. He never appreciated it. Now he was finally living with the woman he claimed to love most. Let them torment each other as much as they wanted. They were finally learning that love and poetry meant nothing compared to the harsh realities of food, money, and survival. Meanwhile, I continued collecting wild herbs and mountain goods. Back home, I sorted and weighed everything before hauling it to the city for sale. With the instincts and experience I carried from my past life, I knew exactly which herbs were valuable and where to sell them for the best price. Not even a month had passed since my divorce from Mark when I earned enough to buy a horse-drawn cart. With it, I could haul more goods to market. Once I'd loaded up a full cart, I headed into the city to sell everything. Seeing how motivated I was, my parents stopped worrying. They realized the divorce hadn't broken me. It had freed me. We always left early, around 2 a.m. My dad, worried I'd be afraid traveling alone, insisted on coming with me. That night, as our cart passed through a grove and started to turn toward the main road, a shadow suddenly dashed out in front of us. The old horse reared and neighed loudly, stomping in place. Thankfully, my dad was an experienced driver and immediately pulled the reins tight, calming the horse. I thought we were being ambushed. Grabbing my machete, I jumped down, ready to fight. But the figure raised both hands and shouted, "Emily, it's me, Mark. Son of a bitch. Trying to scare people to death in the middle of the night. This scumbag had no shame." My anger surged. I raised the machete high. Mark's face went pale with fear. Just as the blade was about to hit his shoulder, I turned it, striking him with the blunt side instead. Even so, the crack of bone was unmistakable. He didn't even have time to dodge. Dropping to his knees, he let out a yelp, half in pain, half in panic. But he didn't get mad. In fact, he laughed through the pain. "Emily," he said, grinning like a fool, "I've got the day off. I'll come with you to the city to sell herbs." "Sell herbs, my ass. Get lost. You're filthy. I'm afraid you'll contaminate my whole cart." I climbed back onto the wagon. My dad snapped the whip and accidentally caught Mark right across the face. The old horse kicked up its hooves and took off. We left Mark coughing dust behind us. He didn't dare tell anyone what really happened. Said he slipped into a ditch on his way back in the dark. He was scared Rachel would give him hell for it. Meanwhile, my business kept growing. I earned more and more, but I never forgot why I started all this. Getting rich alone wasn't enough. I wanted to lead others in the village toward prosperity too. So I set up agricultural procurement stations in various hamlets and appointed respected locals to manage them. I also hired young women to work as clerks in my supermarket. They earned more than they could from farming, which not only helped support their families, but also raised their standing in the household. My reputation grew rapidly. Soon enough, I was featured in the city newspaper and honored by the Women's Federation as a March 8th Red Banner model worker. But Mark still showed up at my house often, always behind Rachel's back. None of us gave him a warm welcome. If he pushed his luck, I'd grab the nearest axe or shovel and chase him out. On my birthday, he came over dead drunk, stumbling and slurring his words. He held a tin of face cream and a bottle of hand lotion. When he saw me, he started crying. Emily, today's your birthday. These are for you. I'm sorry for everything. For my health, you saved every egg you could just so I could have them. Even though you never let yourself eat one. Your face got dry and cracked, but you didn't buy face cream. Your hands froze and bled in winter, but you wouldn't buy lotion. I just got my bonus. This is just a little something from me, Mark said. My eyes burned, hot and sour with emotion. I remembered those winters, washing clothes with bare hands in freezing water, chopping wood in snowstorms. My fingers turned purple, like eggplants, oozing pus when warmed, itching and burning all at once. Mark had never cared. He walked around clean and well-dressed, showing off like a peacock while I suffered in silence. When he saw my eyes turning red, Mark thought he could take advantage of the moment. He leaned in, trying to hug me. I kicked him hard. Get lost, I snapped. If you try touching me again, I'll tell Rachel you're harassing me. Mark and Rachel fought all the time now. Rachel had finally dropped the act and shown her lazy, entitled side. But even so, she clung to Mark tightly, terrified that if she let go, she'd lose her meal ticket. Then, with a loud thud, Mark dropped to his knees in front of me and began confessing everything. Emily, I know I was wrong. That day when you slapped me, it woke me up. I started thinking, really thinking about everything. It was like waking from a dream. After Joey died, I was depressed and didn't see it then, but the dreams kept coming. I realized I've been reborn. I'm living again. And now I see, no one ever treated me better than you. I divorced Rachel. Can we start over? His words hit me like a bucket of ice water. Suddenly everything made sense. Why he'd looked so stunned when I slapped him that day. Why he chased after me when I left. If he hadn't chased me, Joey might still be alive. But fate plays its hand as it will. I stood frozen for a moment. Mark reached out, trying to take my hand, but I jumped back and shut him down completely. Let me be clear. Give up. This isn't a landfill. I don't take in trash. You begged me on your deathbed to bless your next life with Rachel. I did exactly that. The blisters on your feet are from your own path. You chose it. Now walk it. There's no such thing as a redo, I said, voice steady. You call yourself a man, but you have no sense of responsibility. You couldn't even keep your pants zipped, and now you want a second chance. The only reason he was crawling back now was because he saw I had money and could give him a better life. Well, not this time. I hope you and Rachel stay tied together for the rest of your miserable lives, I said, no pity in my voice. Mark flushed bright red. Seeing I was firm, he stammered for a moment, then resorted to blame. You still care about me, Emily. Otherwise, you wouldn't have planned that divorce trap. You wanted revenge. I waved him off with disdain. Mark, the best revenge is living better than you. You're not even worth revenge. I divorced you because I wanted peace. I wanted to be free of a loser like you. Mark's eyes turned red. It was clear he regretted everything. But to me, it was pathetic. He had held a winning hand and ruined it all by himself. He got exactly what he deserved. After I clearly rejected the idea of getting back together, Mark never came around again. He continued living with Rachel, and the fighting never stopped, but something changed. Mark, for once, started shouldering all the housework. Under Rachel's pressure, he even handed over his full paycheck every month. Rachel, meanwhile, didn't lift a finger. Not even to wash her own underwear or socks. Mark had to do it all. The neighbors started gossiping. Mark, one of them called out, laughing, I never saw you wash clothes for Emily, but now you're doing laundry for Rachel? Mark just gave a bitter smile. This is what I deserve. I let dog shit blind me. Rachel didn't care. She didn't touch a drop of cold water. Every day she buried herself in poetry, sending submissions to provincial newspapers, claiming she was the reincarnation of a literary star. Said she'd become a famous poet one day. The mailmen came to their house daily to pick up and deliver her letters. Just on stamps alone, they were spending several yuan a month. A whole year passed, and not a single one of her poems got published. Rachel's expenses piled up. Mark was furious, but he had no one to talk to about it. Then came New Year's Eve, a day for families to reunite and celebrate. The air should have been festive and full of joy. But from the Miller house came a loud crash. The neighbors heard it and gathered to see what happened. Everyone was there except Mark. There were two other men involved. One was the mailman. Mark accused him of having an affair with Rachel after catching them together. The other man wore thick glasses made of raw mineral crystal. He looked gentle and refined, but now he was a mess, pointing at Rachel, sobbing uncontrollably. "You promised me you'd take care of Joey. How could you let him die? I went through hell in the countryside just for you and that child, and now you've married someone else?" "Rachel, this is illegal. Do you even know that?" I'd arrived too late to see what happened myself. It was the neighbors who told me the rest. The man's name was Wayne. Turns out Rachel had already married someone else long ago. He was from another landlord family, and like many with a bad class background, had been sent down to the countryside for re-education. She'd been terrified of being persecuted, especially after becoming pregnant, so she married a poor peasant, Mark, to protect herself. She was playing both sides all along, but since the marriage registration system wasn't yet computerized, nobody realized Rachel had legally married two men. When Wayne finished his reform sentence and returned, he searched for her through mutual acquaintances. What he found was devastating. His biological son was dead, and his wife had remarried. He and Rachel got into a huge fight. And it wasn't just Wayne who was furious. Mark was livid too. The veins on his forehead popped, his eyes bloodshot with rage. It was like he could see a bright green meadow of betrayal blooming on his head. "You bitch! I treated you so well," he yelled. "I divorced Emily for you. I gave you my paycheck, took over all the housework. I never did any of that for Emily. I gave you everything, and this is what you do? You cheated on me, over and over. You even lied about Joey being my son. You've humiliated me." Blinded by betrayal and fury, Mark snapped. He grabbed the iron shovel leaning against the courtyard wall and swung it straight at Rachel. A scream rang out. Blood splattered across the ground. Rachel's arm was severed. With limited medical resources available, doctors had no choice but to amputate the limb to save her life. Mark was arrested and sent to prison. He lost his job. As for Rachel, after being discharged from the hospital, she had nowhere to go. She tried returning to Wayne to make amends, but he wanted nothing to do with her and kicked her out. No one ever saw her again. 5 years later, I had built a retail empire across the entire province, over 20 supermarket branches and nearly 1,000 women employed. Their wallets grew fat and their spines straightened. They gained respect at home and a voice in their families. The women were deeply grateful. I was recognized as a national outstanding female entrepreneur and traveled to the capital to receive an award. I even became a provincial representative at the People's Congress, submitting proposals to support national development. Through all the honors, I never forgot why I started. On my way home after the conference, I passed through a train station and saw a ragged beggar hunched over, stopping every traveler to beg, not letting a single one pass untouched. As he shuffled over and saw my face, he froze. Then he turned and bolted. I simply smiled and shook my head, then stepped forward,